My name is Matthew Hartwell. I'm the head of experience here at BZ Build Co.
Okay.
I handle customer relations, outreach, and I'm part of the concierge team that takes people from start to finish, helping hold their hands through this process. Because as I was saying to a friend the other day, no one woke up first week of January this year here in Altadena thinking, this is the year I'm going to rebuild my house. So no one was really ready for this. And so we're aiming to make this as painless a process as possible. And part of that is Rebuild Roadmap, which is our series of educational webinars. We had our first successful one just last week, and it was fantastic. It was all about starting to construction, the sorts of things that you need to be thinking about as you enter into looking for a designer and architect and everything. And it was presented by David Donahue and Jonathan Gallagher, who are both on this webinar here with me. They're our build specialists here at BZ Build Co. That lives on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/BZ Build Co. And you can also find it if you go onto our events page. It's linked on there, bzbuildco.com/events. All of these webinars will be archived for viewing later. So if you're going to miss one in the future and you're like, darn it, that's one I needed to know about, you saw on the calendar, don't worry, it will be posted, as will this one. If you have any friends who want to watch this later, feel free to share these links with them. Our goal is to make this a valuable resource of education, whether or not you end up building with us. Obviously, we hope that you do, but more so, it's just a matter of making sure homeowners in Altadena understand what they need to know going into this process, because it's a bear, honestly, and our goal is to make sure that it is, as while it will never be easy, we want it to be as easy as possible. To that end, tonight, our presentation is being given by Xjvirr Thomas, a gentleman we are very fortunate to have working with us. He is a permits expert. He currently works for the city of Burbank as a city planner, and he deals and interfaces with the county on permitting on a regular basis. He knows their ins and outs and all their weird quirks, of which they have many. And so he is uniquely positioned to speak to this, especially as we enter into this process for Altadena. And so with that, Xjvirr, if you'd like to introduce yourself, I'll start the slideshow, and you can take it away.
Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate it. Um, Once again, my name is Xjvirr Thomas. As Matt indicated, I am a city planner with the city of Burbank. Next slide. Not only am I a city planner with the city of Burbank, I also do policy and legislative analysis with the city itself. So I go through the various zoning, land use, housing policies. I've been with the city roughly about 8 to 10 years now. I've been doing planning exclusively for about 7. As of right now, as you can see, I'm in a library because I am currently a student at UCLA. I'm earning my master's in urban and regional planning so that I can further develop and understand the rules of just the built environment, how it impacts people on a day-to-day basis, and just trying to understand what the rules and regulations that the state would like to do coming down on cities and counties itself. My job here with BZ has been wonderful thus far. What I like to say I like to do is I like to navigate the nuances of the county municipal code. What are all the submittal requirements, and then what is also the approval process that they're going through, and that's kind of a layout of what I'll be showing throughout this presentation. So next slide. So first, I will go through what the stages of review are. There are 2 main components. First, you will have just an initial design that you will kind of work with your architect and or designer on. And what you will do is you will then submit that through what is called EPIC LA, which is the Regional Planning Department's approval process. And this matters whether or not it's a like for like rebuild to what you were previously building, what you previously had on your site, or you were doing a brand new rebuild from the ground up. Um, Planning will then review the conceptual plans themselves, which will consist of a architectural set, which I will discuss later on. Once planning has issued their approval, identifying that the location of the actual home is okay and good, then you will then be allowed to submit to the Department of Public Works Building and Safety Division for their review. Their review will consist of what is called the structural set, or engineering set of plans, which will be everything that would need to meet the building code requirements. After you then go through that process, you will then be issued a building permit for the approval of the actual structure itself. Finally, you will then begin the construction portion where there is a series of inspections that will take place from the very beginning of where they will do a site inspection, identifying where the actual placement will go, all the way up until the final inspection after the structure has been completely built. And then you will receive your certificate of occupancy, which will then essentially allow you to occupy your home going forward. Next slide. Now I will get into a little finer details of what the timelines are at each of these steps. Now, based on the several meetings that I've had with the county going inside of the recovery office and meeting with individual planners, these are the timelines that they are kind of issuing out to the public and what they are telling me. So during that first initial design phase, when you are submitting to the regional planning department, they will take in your conceptual plans or your architectural set, and they will essentially process an invoice. They say it will take them roughly about 7 days, about 5 to 7 days to process that invoice for that plan check review. Roughly, the review fee is roughly about $1,400. Once you have paid said invoice, that first review that will be done by regional planning will take about 5 to 7 days if you are doing a like for like rebuild. If you are doing a brand new rebuild, they are saying it will take them roughly about 2 to 3 weeks for them to review the actual plans themselves. If there is a second review, and by second review, I mean there are corrections that need to be addressed on that actual architectural set. You might have a height that might be wrong. You might have a setback that might be an issue. They're saying that second review will then take 5 days. And there's your 5 business days. Now, again, once you are approved with planning, you are then allowed to move on to the Department of Public Works Building and Safety Division, where they will then review the full structural set of plans, your Title 24s, your energy calculations, all of those things will then be reviewed at this stage. They are what building and safety is saying is if it is a like for like rebuild, they are doing their reviews right now in 10 business days. If it is a brand new rebuild, it will take them about 3 to 4 weeks for that first initial review to take place, and then subsequently apply take maybe another week or two for any corrections that may need to be addressed. Next slide. Just to give you an idea as to what is in that conceptual or architectural set, it will be made up of 3 plans that you will submit to regional planning, which you will see in the middle is a site plan, which will be a zoomed out aerial over the placement of the house and or any other structures on the lot. Next to your left, you will see a floor plan, which will be a more zoomed in version, identifying where all the rooms of occupancy will take place, your kitchen, your garage, if you're having a patio space, so on and so forth. And then to the right, you will see an elevation drawing, which will identify the overall height of the structure. And each indicating marker will be heights from the actual natural grade, where your plates will be, your top of plate being on the second floor, first floor, so on and so forth. So this is what planning will actually review. Again, they're saying if this is a brand new rebuild, it should take them roughly about 2 weeks to actually do. In my experience, I'd say planning usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks for the actual review, and then subsequently any new additional requirements or corrections that need to be addressed will take them about 5 days. Next slide. Once you are then approved at that stage, once again, you will then submit a structural set of plans. And these are all the actual divisions and or departments that will actually either need to review the plans themselves and issue clearances in order for you to get to that building permit stage. Right now, the department is saying that it should take them roughly about, again, assuming it is a new rebuild, should take them about 3 to 4 weeks. In my experience, it usually takes, because you are looking at levels of nuance when it comes to the plans, it usually does take about 2 months for the review. I like to just kind of, again, in my experience, tell people like, hey, you would to tell them what the actual long lead time is going to be, as opposed to telling them 3, 4 weeks when you know it may not be possible. So I try to let people know that the structural set may end up actually needing to be reviewed for about 2 to 3 weeks. And then any subsequent reviews that need to take place after that will probably take another week or two. But these are a list of all the departments and their divisions that would conduct a review of that actual structural set before your building permit is issued.
Xavier, I have a question.
Yes.
You are going to the planning department on a regular basis, almost every week, just trying to check in to see where things are. Do you have an update on how many plans have been submitted for the first architectural review? And then how many are actually on to this much longer, more in-depth review?
Yes. Yes. So the county actually has a dashboard tracker available for public viewing in terms of where they are actually at in terms of the amounts of buildings that have been destroyed and who has actually submitted plans and then where they are at in the process. As of, I believe I checked 2 days ago, there have been 0 rebuilds that have been issued. There have been 7 permits that have been issued for rebuilds. Now, that does not necessarily say that they've been rebuilds for houses. They could just be rebuilds for garages or accessory structures. As of right now, I believe there's roughly about 150 to 160 plans that are currently in this phase right here of plan set. And the zoning review, I believe there's roughly about 200 is my last check. But again, that dashboard is publicly available, so we can check at any point in time if you want to see exactly where they are in terms of their actual reviews.
And thank you for that information. I really find that helpful. From the time you started watching, have you seen those numbers really tick up, or have they? Because having 200 under review is pretty encouraging. I know it seems like a small number, but we're still, relatively speaking, in the early stages of getting plan sets created, having them approved by the homeowners, and then getting them submitted to LA County. So this is what is your perspective on what you've seen happen and the numbers?
So what I've seen is, I mean, they all have gone up, and the anticipation is that they're only going to continue to go up as individual people do hire designers, architecture firms, engineering companies, things like that. The resources are available and they are vast. So you will see those numbers continue to climb. As of right now, again, they're trying to be as transparent as possible as to what the process is. And again, webinars such as this will help individuals navigate what that system will look like. But again, I was there when there was pretty much maybe 10 submittals to planning and zoning. But once individuals understand that really to get to the planning and zoning, just to get a conceptual approval, all you really need is a site plan, floor plan, and elevations. That gets you in the door. And that already starts the process at that point. So yes, those numbers will continue to rise. And we will monitor them as they do.
Hey,
And I think
Xavier,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Tom.
Oh, thank you. Xavier, a quick question.
Mhm.
So obviously now there's the number of applicants or applications is on the lower end. So I believe the county is doing everything in-house with city and county employees. As they continue to get bombarded and as they see that drastic spike in applications, do you anticipate that they're going to be using either third parties to review plan sets for them that will be certified? Or I've also seen someone such as Rick Caruso introducing some sort of AI review of plan check. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on those two.
Okay. So in terms of what I'm hearing from the county, from getting outside reviewers for plan checks, whether or not they're the conceptuals or the structural set, in any city that I've been aware of, and I do know planners in various cities, city of LA, city of Pasadena, city of Glendale, whenever a city becomes bombarded with a large set of plans to review, they will always outsource them. And there are hundreds of companies in the state of California that do just contract work, and they can contract them for a time period, maybe 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. And then their job is just to solely look at one specific set of criteria. It may just be, hey, we want to go hire a company just to look at the planning set because we all of a sudden now the numbers have gone up from 200 to 400 to 500, and we only have a certain amount of planners who can review them. So therefore, we now need to outsource them. And that's pretty much what they're capable of. And what I've heard from the county is that due to, again, this unprecedented event, they've actually had to go out and get people who have retired and try to convince them to unretire and come back and actually walk people through what this process would look like. Part of that recovery center that is open is part of an effort of people who had to unretire just because they want to lend a helping hand. So it's one of those things where if the county needs to, they will access all the resources they have available to be able to do and conduct reviews.
Great, thank you for that.
And
Thank you
Xavier,
very
follow
much.
up to Jonathan's question. Are you
Mhm.
seeing that LA County has actually started to reach out to those third-party plan checkers yet?
Not that I'm aware of, no. That might be an internal conversation that they're having, not that I'm aware of, but you will more than likely see as those numbers rise, we can always ask them like, hey, who's doing this review? And what is also good about Epic LA is you can always see who is doing your review. When you do submit the plans, you have access to your plan checker, you have access to their email and their phone number. So if you do know who that person is, you can always contact them and ask them like, hey, are you someone that the county contracted, or are you an actually county employee? That would be information that they would know. But again, their job is to be as detailed and understanding of the code as anyone who's going to be conducting these reviews. But as
And I
of right
think
now, no, I do not know who they're going to be contracting or if they have started that process yet.
And I think that as a company, and I think that we're also really fortunate to have you as a consultant for us. We really appreciate all of this. The one thing that I would kind of share is that we're going to continue to give updates during these webinars and our lecture series as these numbers continue to grow, and as we kind of see things kind of moving through the process as the months and years, kind of just kind of follow this. It's going to be interesting to be really, it's going to be critical that we're kind of aware of it and sensitive to it, and advocate for, the transparency that they're doing, which I think is great to hear that they are. But anyway, I want to let you to be able to continue to go on. This is fantastic.
Please, by all means. Next slide.
If I may interject real quick, we've
Oh, of
got
course.
several more attendees, and so I just wanted to welcome them and let you know that this will be posted on our YouTube channel. For those of you who missed the first 10-15 minutes of it, you can go back and rewatch. And I also wanted everyone to be aware that there is a Q&A. You can submit written Q&A questions, and at the end, we'll have a session where we answer all the questions to the best of our ability. So please feel free to type in any questions you want into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those at the end. All right, sorry, next slide.
Mhm. For this portion, I'm going to get a little specific about accessory dwelling units, which is a very popular thing as of right now, due to essentially the state opening up and streamlining the ability for accessory dwelling units to be built across the state. Over the past 10 years, I'd say maybe there's been 8 to 10 state bills that have essentially gone down and opened up the possibility for individuals to construct accessory dwelling units on their lot that are not as restrictive and more streamlined in the process. So currently right now in Altadena, you can submit for an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU. You can actually submit those plans either with your brand new construction, or you can do it separately. It can be independent of you actually wanting to propose a new house, or it can be in conjunction with whatever new house you want to do. LA County does have pre-approved plans, and you can actually go through their pre-approved plans and identify which plan set you would like, what architectural design you would like, layouts, such things as that. And they are offering a more streamlined process if you do go through their pre-approved plan process. However, if you choose to not, and you want to have a very site-specific site design and style, there are dozens of styles that are out there, architectural styles that you can choose from. What I've seen is most individuals like to match the architectural style with whatever the main house is. So typically they would, let's say they pick a brand new construction of a Spanish style house, they would then propose a Spanish style ADU just for consistency on the actual lot itself. When you actually, again, you don't really need a primary dwelling in this instance in order to have an ADU. The county is allowing you to permit an ADU just by itself in isolation, while you still try to figure out if you where you would like to place your new house, or any new rebuilds that you would like to do. There is a covenant process, but that is a state requirement only for junior ADUs, and junior ADUs are within the existing envelope of a single family house. Those can also be proposed in the same location. Let's say you did have a front facing garage and you are proposing a brand new house, and let's say it's a like for like rebuild. You can actually propose the conversion of that ADU at the exact same time of a brand new house. You don't have to make it a two-step process. of having to do a garage and then an ADU. You can just come in right off the bat and propose your ADU and your new house right at the same time. All future requirements and future updates for ADUs are pending. Again, the state is seeing that ADUs is a way for the state to actually combat housing unit shortage. So they're using ADUs as a means to actually get the housing production up. So right now, I believe there's already handfuls of legislation that are looking to address more ADUs and being able to build more of them on the lot. So again, future requirements will come about, and we'll just have to monitor them. And then, is there a priority necessarily for ADUs compared to primary structures? This is really going to come down to the homeowner and their current circumstance. Again, you are allowed to do an ADU on its own by itself without having to do a primary dwelling unit if you just need a place to actually reside while you figure out where you actually want to put your primary structure. So the county is allowing people to do that because they want to prioritize individuals coming back to the community.
A couple
Next.
questions because
Mhm.
I love this topic, and I think it's really great that we're touching on it. Xavier, can you talk about the size that somebody could build? I know that in the Burbank, I think the maximum size is 1,000 square feet,
1,000 square feet, correct.
and in the city of and in the county of LA it's different. And so, could you just touch on what you're allowed to do?
County of Los Angeles allows you to do 1,200 square feet. Now, again, there are some nuances when it comes to heights. Your height restrictions are dependent on if you're within half a mile of a transit stop or not, if you have a detached structure or not. They do have a very detailed summary sheet on the county website that does kind of outline what you can and cannot do with ADUs. There are restrictions if you are within what is considered a high fire severity zone. And that's also something that is kind of pending as of right now. But as of right now, if you're in a high fire severity zone, and you do not have access to a freeway, two means of access to a freeway, you actually are only limited to what the bare minimum that the state would allow for an ADU, which they are calling state exemption ADUs. So you can do an ADU regardless if you are in this high fire severity zone. However, again, you're kind of limited in terms of what you can do. But yes, the maximum allowed in the county is 1,200 square feet. The maximum allowed for a junior ADU is 500 square feet.
And the one other thing I want to jump in real quick is, what is the smallest that you're allowed to do?
The smallest you're allowed to do is an efficiency unit, which I believe is 120 square feet.
Yeah, I think it's like 120 or 150, and that's
It's
pretty
one,
small.
correct.
But they you can do it. And one of the reasons I'm happy that we're touching on this is that people have been talking to me and to Jonathan about the idea of doing an ADU because it's not as big as the primary, and it's going to allow them to get in back onto their property a lot sooner and a lot faster. So I'm really happy that we're able to cover this for everybody.
Xavier, I want to ask a couple quick questions on ADUs. Can you speak a little bit about the setback requirements and placement of the ADUs, either in the rear of the lot or in the front? We field a lot of questions about, former garages that were detached, that were in the rear of the lot, and people are, speaking about maybe doing two-story or building above it. Former garages that were on the property line. Can you give us a little bit more information about placement?
Yes. So when it comes to let's start with detached garages. Let's say you had a detached garage and your intention was to convert that over into an ADU. However, your garage sat on the zero setback line or sat on the property line. You are allowed to essentially rebuild an ADU on that zero lot line, because the assumption would have been that you were going to convert over a garage into an ADU at that location, which would have been allowed at that point. So at that there, you can do and then if you wanted to expand it or go beyond the footprint of what the garage was previously there, you can go up to that 1,200 square feet. However, any of those new additional square footages would have to meet the 4 foot setback requirement from the side property line, 4 foot setback requirement from the rear property line. Now, what they are saying is if you are, let's say you're using the existing or attaching the existing footprint of the existing house, and you are, or whatever the new proposed house would be, your height limits are the same limits that are granted to you as the single family house would be, which would be 35 feet. At this point, your square footage would still be limited to 1,200 square feet. And then your setbacks for, let's say you did want to expand towards the backyard, would again be 4 feet from the side, 4 feet from the rear. That's kind of just a rule of thumb when it comes to ADUs. You're looking at 4 feet across the board for anything. And then if you did have a detached structure, I did want to add that your detached ADU does need to be at least 5 feet away from the existing single family house itself,
Thank you.
or proposed single family house. Next slide. Here, I will kind of walk you through what we here at BZ will do for your phase 1 pre-qualifications. What we'd like to do is we'd like to get an understanding as to what your needs are. So the first thing that we will do is we'll have you fill out a questionnaire with a series of questions. Number of bedrooms, did you have a pool? What would you like to do a like for like rebuild? Do you want a fence? What type of architectural design you have? And then from there, we can kind of assess and determine, okay, what are all the things that we need to take into account when it comes to the code? Next. And then so certain things such as like the location of your garage and any other structures, we will check your setback requirements, height limits. Do you want to put a bathroom inside, a half bath, whatever it may be? Do you want to have a fence? Do you, because of your actual slope on your lot, do you need to have retaining walls? How high can those retaining walls be? And then we will look at all of those things. My job is to navigate through the code and try to understand to the best of my ability what are the county's needs and what they're requiring per the code. Another thing that we have had conversations about is in regards to sewer and septic. So there are properties in Altadena that are connected to sewer lines, and there are others that have their own individual septic lines. So right now, what the county is saying that is if you are within 200 feet or closer to an existing sewer line, you must connect to that sewer line, and it's at the homeowner's expense. However, if you previously did have septic, they will, and you are outside of that 200 feet, you are allowed to maintain your actual septic system. What they're requiring is that one, you do have to submit an actual set of plans to them for the Department of Public Health to review your existing wastewater system to see whether or not your previous and or existing septic system will be able to hold the capacity for what it is that you're proposing. If it is a like for like rebuild, the underlying assumption is that your existing septic tank should be fine. However, what the Department of Public Health is saying is if you are going to be adding a bedroom to that, then they really do need to do an evaluation and a study to see whether or not that increase of a bedroom will actually increase your actual water capacity or wastewater capacity, and then they'll have to do an evaluation on that septic line. What I have here also is what is called a minor conditional use permit. Let's say there is something in the code. Let's say you do have a design and there's something in the code that you find actually restricting. And you actually would like to challenge that code or go outside of it. You would go through what we call in planning call an entitlement. And that entitlement is their version is called a minor conditional use permit. You're asking essentially for a deviation from the code in this one singular issue or this one singular thing. And then therefore you'd have to go, you pay a fee, and then you go through a series of findings to identify and make your case to the county saying like, hey, I would like to have this deviation from the code. It will not cause issues to the general welfare, public health. It will not be a detriment to the public. Therefore, I should be allowed to have it. They will make a determination and they will get back to you whether or not that deviation would then be approved or not. If you did have questions in regards to existing permitting structures from the past, if anything after 1954, what the county is saying is they should have a permit and or a record of that structure on the lot. However, the nuance comes in is that they may not have something as detailed as maybe a floor plan or maybe an elevations, but they will have a record saying that, hey, this structure at this size was built in this year. But again, sometimes some plans were scanned in, some were not. It really is just you have to kind of do a request, get that information, or try to see if they do have it available, and then you can use that record going forward.
I have some questions, if I may, please.
Of course.
Thank you. Talking about the 200 feet, that is what I've understood. It's because some contractors are out there saying that it's 200 feet from, let's say, a private community. They might have a shared road. They're off on their own. But that's not necessarily where it's not accurate to say that if your community is
No,
within 200 feet of a sewer line, that everybody has to connect. It's only the individual property. If that
they
itself is 200 feet, then they have to.
my understanding is that is individual parcels is how they are evaluating it. Is individual properties. If when you propose a project, if that specific site is within 200 feet, then they are making that specific site have to connect to wherever that sewer line is.
Thank you. And I think one of the things that we've also discussed, and this is kind of what I really like about these deep dives into the requirements and the policy, is that if we're talking to somebody or you are someone who has a septic system and you're not sure, the only way to really find out is to go to the county and ask them to see where the closest sewer lateral is. Or that's in our case, if you're working with us, then we'd have to go down there and make sure that we can put on the plan set that it is further away from 200 feet. And so the homeowner is not required to connect.
That is correct. So that's what I would be doing during the pre-qualification plan set. We would be identifying whether or not you were on septic or if you already were connected to a sewer. If you were on septic, we would go through the county Department of Public Health and identify how close are you to an actual sewer line. Are you within that 200 feet? Is that then going to require you to have to connect? Are you beyond that? And then we kind of go through that dance to figure out which one you will need. The county does not, they do have some public facing information in terms of what their GIS map has in terms of zoning, what overlays, what specific plans you're in. However, one of them that is not public facing is where the sewer lines are. However, you can see if you previously were on septic or not. But again, you have to go to the direct Department of Public Health and Public Works to see exactly what your capacity is. That's another level that we can actually offer you as well. But in terms of the sewer line, that's something that we have to kind of navigate to see exactly how close were you to an existing sewer line, or how close
Follow-up
are you to a
question.
sewer line.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Follow-up question is going to be on existing septic systems. A lot of people had very old septic systems, and
Mhm.
they're not going to be up to current code by any stretch of the imagination. And some of them could have, it may have been damaged when the Army Corps or the private contractors cleared the lots. Is that where the county, where the homeowner would request the inspectors to come out? Are they going to be able to say it's workable, not workable, or there needs to be some repair to it? Is there anything you can kind of share with people that might be a little bit questioning of the process of how they can get their septic system kind of okayed?
So, from my understanding, in terms of getting your septic system cleared by the Department of Public Health, what they are requiring you to do is to submit essentially a floor plan and a site plan to them. They will then do an evaluation and a study to see exactly what is your current wastewater capacity in your existing septic tank. That study may require them to do an inspection of the actual site. And then from there, what the department is doing is they will then get back to the property owner and whoever who is on behalf of the property owner, letting them know, hey, these are the things that need to be corrected, either with the site, with the plans, with the septic tank, whatever it may be. They will relay that information to you to let you know whether or not, hey, you have an old septic tank that needs to be updated. These are the things that we recommend. This is what you actually need to have adequate capacity, so on and so forth. But they will relay that information to you. However, they are requiring that you do submit a set of plans so they can do that review in order to get back to you with what is going to be needed.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Yes. Next slide. So I know I've said a few times a like for like rebuild or a redesign. I just want to kind of make it very clear what a like for like is and how the county is defining a like for like. Because certain cities do define like for like very differently. So a like for like replacement must match the original structure in size, location, and use. You are allowed to do minor changes to that actual existing design as long as it does not increase the floor area, height, mass, bulk, or footprint more than 10% or 200 square feet, whichever is greater. And then if you are doing a brand new design or a brand new redesign, you are going beyond that 10% or the 200 square feet. And really, it's completely up to you. You can come up with any architectural design, any type of site location, heights. The only bounds that you have are within the code itself. Um, and whatever the restrictions are in the residential design standards, those are the only bounds that you have. But again, we will work with you in terms of whatever you would like in terms of your imagination, in terms of building that structure that you please.
Oh, so one of the things that you touched on I find very fascinating is bulk and mass.
Yes.
Jonathan and I have been talking to people about that after we learned from you and Mr. Jim Gove, going to the county and finding out some of the things that are within that 10% or 200 square feet. So it's not just the expansion of the home. Let's say you had 1,000 and you want to go to 1,200. It's the bulk and mass. It relates to just how high your ceilings are, and maybe not it's the ceiling, or is it the plate
Brief.
height or the roof height? Can you talk
It would
about
be
that?
your roof height is what you're looking at.
Okay.
So let's take that exact example. Let's say you did have 1,000 square foot house and you wanted to go to 1,200 square feet. That would be within the bounds of like for like. However, let's say your previous house was only 12 feet high and you actually, for your new house, you actually want to go to 15 feet, 16 feet high because you want to have now vaulted ceilings. That creation of existing space from going from 12 to 16 feet, that increase of 4 feet gets factored into the like for like, thus putting you outside the bounds of like for like, and you are now in the category of a new rebuild. So they are capturing any increases in height as well in that 10%. So kind of the rule of thumb is you might want to stay within, if you would like to be like for like and you didn't want to increase your height, you might want to stay within about 2 feet of what was existing previously. And again, the conversations that we have had internally, and there are conversations in regards to trying to build based on the new building code requirements and energy efficient requirements, when those are now things that you need to actually put in your roof. And that now is almost going to increase your volume right then and there. So what is the county going to do when I'm required to meet the building code requirements, but then it's going to push my height above what I was doing previously? That may be an issue when people just choose to do like for like. But again, that's something that the county is probably more than likely going to have to work through. But again, just to iterate, that height increase in height does get captured in that 10% in terms of a like for like rebuild.
Thank you. And I think that's really important for anybody who's, not yet started their design or had their permits issued, is be really mindful of that. It's not just your square footage. It is, if you are going to increase the height of the roof on your home, that is going to play a factor in if it is like for like or if it is not. And so follow-up question would be, Xavier, is that something that would be we could ask the county to say, hey, we are using the example of 1,000 square foot home and we want to go to 1,200, but let's say we want to go to 1,100, but we also kind of want to raise the roof a little bit. Do you know if there's a calculation that they're going to share with us, or is it just one floor plan, one property at a time, individual evaluations?
It's going to be individual evaluations that have to get reviewed. And then we would have to have discussions with either the person that's in planning or regional planning or the person who's in building plan check in terms of what it like for like, especially if that's the intention. Really, we're trying to walk in there and let them know, hey, the homeowner would like the intention of staying like for like. However, there are requirements that they do have to be in terms of building code. But if I'm being told that my height cannot be increased, but it's like you have two conflicting points and we have to walk in there with those actual drawings and they either have to show us their formula or their calculation, or we have to get some type of remediation and let us go forward with whatever design we have. But again, it's going to be everything I would say from this point going forward is going to be a case by case, project by project situation. So will everything. The county is learning how to apply their code. A lot of their design standards are fairly new. So this is their first time where they've ever had to like apply them on a mass scale. So a lot of the things that they're learning are actually new and we're learning along with them. But that's kind of our job.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how the county is determining the existing height home? Many of these properties that were destroyed don't have plan sets. The homeowners don't have existing, uh, sets of plans that were approved. So ideally, they're looking at old photographs and such. How does the county determine what the existing height was? And also, if the existing home was on a raised foundation and the new build is going to be a slab on grade, does that also impact this bulk and mass that we're speaking about?
Yes. So how the county is doing an evaluation of trying to identify what the previous height is versus what is going to be proposed is they're doing just that. They are going back and trying to see if there are old records of the actual structure. Are there elevation drawings? But as I indicated before, sometimes there are no elevation drawings. So the only thing that they can do is go based on old photographs, and they can go through old Google images, and then try to assess. Like it's kind of sometimes apparent when someone was on a foundation and they did have one story, and then someone wants to come in and propose and do a two-story. Like obviously you did increase your height, therefore you are above like for like. It's going to come down when it's a little bit questionable, where someone was on a raised foundation, but now they want to come back on a slab on grade, and you may be off a little bit by maybe a foot or two. And it's really hard to tell because there are no permit records, there's no elevation drawings, there's no height calculations. And all we can really tell them is like, hey, this is what they're proposing. Again, it's going to be a case by case situation. I do not know how the county is going to handle that. Because if they have no indication of saying like, hey, no, this structure actually was 14 feet, you're proposing 17, we can't allow it. I don't know how they're going to do that without any type of record showing that.
And now, given that ambiguity, can you express the importance of making sure that you hire a strong and experienced professional to represent you when dealing with the county in these, like I said, these kind of ambiguous situations?
Yes, I mean I don't know how to emphasize this enough. The county is learning as they're going along. And so if there is something that you would like and something that you want to advocate, they are kind of open to interpretations of codes that we may have. They're open to new designs. They're open to wanting to allow people to produce products that they know are going to be good for the community. So if there are ambiguities, nuances, it is beneficial to hire someone who does know what they are doing in terms of not just site design, but how to navigate the code and then how to speak the language of the county to get what it is that you would like as a homeowner.
Thank you for that.
Next slide. These are some of the benefits in terms of you wanting to do a like for like rebuilds or staying within that 10%. You do get to maintain your previous setbacks, even if they are non-conforming. And what a non-conforming setback is that if you were to come in and do a structure today, it means that the setbacks would not meet the current code requirements, which the current code requirements are 10% of your lot width. So let's say you did have a 60-foot wide lot. Technically, your side yard setbacks are 6 feet on both sides. However, if your structure was sitting on a setback of only 3 feet from the side property lines, if you did a like for like rebuild, you can maintain that 3-foot setback. And included with that is if you wanted to do that additional 200 square feet, that 200 square feet can also maintain those existing non-conforming setback requirements. It does simplify the plans. In terms of construction, again, you already knew what you had previously. It does help when an engineer can come in and go, okay, we now know what was there. You can start that engineering process early on. That way, once the conceptual set or the architectural set has been approved, that way the engineer may have already started working on it. And that way that submittal can take place right away. The other benefits that have been discussed is the county is doing a more streamlined review, and the timeline is shorter for like rebuilds. In both phases, whether or not it's the regional planning phase or in the building and safety phase, they're doing shorter timeline reviews for that as opposed to a brand new rebuild. And the one thing is your property tax does not get assessed based on the new value of the house. If you were doing a like for like, it's based on what the previous value was Again, they do not want to penalize you for having to rebuild your house due to a natural disaster.
I have a question if I could please. So the one thing about the like for like and the non-conforming setbacks, and if you
Mhm.
touched on this, and I think I want to kind of bring some sort of lift that up a little bit. So if you
Mhm.
had a 3-foot setback from the property line and you wanted to add 200 feet, you could, again, as you said, maintain that 3-foot setback on all the new construction,
Correct.
which is really unusual because as we're talking about ADUs have a grandfather kind of clause if you want to, convert a garage. But if you want to add additional square footage to that garage that has a non-conforming setback, you then have to modulate off of it.
Correct. Now that is because AD regulations are a little different because those are state
Mhm.
requirements in their state bills that require anything that is new for the purpose of an AD, you have to meet these specific setback requirements. These like for like requirements they are that we are discussing now as county is indicating like, hey, yes, you can do a like for like rebuild, but they do understand that certain houses were smaller. So they are giving you the grace of doing 10% and or the 200 square feet, and then maintaining whatever that existing nonconformity may be. It could also even be height. It does not matter to them. So they can let you go ahead and maintain that. ADUs, because they are governed by state law, they have to meet those state requirements.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Next slide. Speaking of garages, whether or not they are detached and attached, what I would like to kind of emphasize is the county code, in terms of the county municipal code, in terms of residential standards specifically, is kind of broken up into multiple sections. So when it comes to someone who wants to produce a residential structure in an R1 zone, which a majority of these will be, you kind of have to piece together different parts of the code itself. It's not just what are allowed for single families. It's not just what are allowed for single R1 structures or R1 zone structures. There are also residential design standards. And specifically, as what we would call as like an overlay, there's an Altadena community standards. And there are a set of regulations that have to be met in terms of that as well. So during that questionnaire phase that I indicated earlier, when you're asking for, hey, I would like to do this type of setback or this type of design, our job is to go through and identify each individual section that discusses residential design standards, single family zones, all of that, to make sure that what you are proposing does meet those requirements. That way, when you do submit it to planning, they will do the same exact level of checking in terms of whether or not it meets all the requirements. The same thing comes in one of the nuances that I've kind of learned about is when it comes to garages, when it in the Altadena community development standards or residential design standards. If someone is coming in and proposing an attached garage in the front, your front facing garage, if it's facing the street, can't be closer to the front property line than the front door, which means essentially you have to align it either with the front facade of the house if you are proposing a covered porch, or you have to set it back an additional 5 feet. A lot of people have been trying to propose garages that are closer to the front property line than the actual front door. That is not allowed. So it's, again, understanding that there are residential design standards that have to be met when it comes to that. The only exception to that front facing garage, if it's closer to the front property line than the front door, is if you do a like for like rebuild, and that's the position of where your garage was. Then your garage can be wherever it previously was, whether or not it was close to the front property line, further back, certain things like that. But there are design requirements that have to be kept in mind when it comes to positions of garages, accessory structures, and the dwelling itself. Another question that has been asked is whether or not if I had a detached garage, can I build any type of attachment to that? Let's say I wanted to have a recreation room or a workshop or a playroom. Can I attach something to that garage? The answer is yes. However, what you're required to then do is meet the required setbacks on that lot for that attachment that's going to the garage. Now, the other question that's being asked is, can I have a bathroom in the inside of that actual attachment to that access to that garage? The answer is a little nuanced. You can have a half bathroom in a workshop or a playroom that's attached to a garage only if it's considered habitable space. So what is considered habitable space for the county is if it is a playroom, or a recreation room. However, if it's identified as a workshop, a half bath is not allowed inside of that actual attachment to the garage. So you have to be very particular and specific in identifying and labeling the structures that you're proposing on site.
So I have a question too, and I think you might have touched on it, but I want to kind of again ask it. Is that if somebody had a garage in the back of the property and they want to move it to the front, they're allowed to do that if they only if they attach it to the primary structure that they're rebuilding, or is there something else that they have to do?
So let's say now the question I will ask is, are they choosing to make it attached to the main house for access purposes? Because most people want to have their garage attached to their house so they can to have internal access to the main house. But if you were to have, let's say, a detached garage in the front and a house in back, you would not be able to do that. Again, the code is very specific in that if you have wherever your garage door is or wherever your garage is being placed, it cannot be closer to the front property line than the front door. In pretty much no scenario, unless you're doing a like for like rebuild, and that's where it was previously. So if you were now, I have indicated that there is what is called the minor conditional use permit. So if you did want to go through that entitlement, and that is the one specific deviation that you did want to push back on the county on, you are more than free to go through that process and tell the county, like, hey, I will actually want my garage closer to my front property line for access purposes, and I want to have my house behind. You would have to go through the entire process and make that argument. Have I seen that done? I have not. But it does not hurt to try if the homeowner is willing to go through the process and they're very adamant about wanting their design in that specific way.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I love the clarity to these things because it's very complex. And the more questions we ask, the more answers that we get from you, I think is really helpful to everybody.
Yeah,
I've
I mean,
got,
I ask that you do ask more questions because it forces me to get the answers, and so I can actually adequately spell out and tell people, hey, this is what you can and cannot do. I also, as the county is learning, I am learning as well. And with every single design, every quirk, every nuance, we learn new information, and with new information, it will help speed up the process going forward.
I've got a question on the detached garage. We've had some people who have utilized their former garage that was on the lot line, so 0
Mhm.
lot line as kind of an office space, a rumpus room. They would like to replace that detached garage as like for like, but you mentioned that you can build onto it. Can you make that existing garage that was on the 0 lot line or a very thin lot setback? Can you expand to that garage? Can you add square footage?
You can add that is calculated in that like for like. They will calculate in your total 10%. The 10% isn't calculated for just the house, it's 10% of the lot. So let's say you wanted to keep your house the exact same, but you wanted to expand your garage by an additional 100 feet, 150 square feet. That still falls within the parameters of the like for like. So yes, you can expand your garage if you wanted to do so, and then still maintain that 0 lot line or that non-conforming setback, whatever it may be. In addition to that, let's hypothetically, this is another nuance of the county code. Let's say it was detached and it was a brand new garage that even expanded beyond the 10%. If they are more than 75 feet from the property line, they can automatically already build it on the 0 lot line, regardless of if it's a like for like or it's a brand new rebuild. So if you have a detached garage 75 feet from the front property line, you can build it right on that 0 lot line and you can have as big of a garage as you would like.
Excellent. Thank you.
And then
Thank you.
actually, while we're on this topic of like for like plus the 10%, Stephanie Leslie had a question.
Mhm.
She asked, if I want to build like for like and increase the size of my home 10%, let's say, then the tax assessor will assess the additional 10% using pricing in effect when I purchase the home. Is this correct?
Pricing in effect when I purchased the home. I'm assuming it's when she first purchased the home back when and in whatever year it was. That's where the assessment will take place. Whenever the original purchase by this individual, that's the tax assessment that you will actually have. Even if you were to go increase it by 10%, that does not then increase your actual property tax assessment at all. It's taxed at whatever you were paying previously. So that's the level of nuance that they're allowing. So there is no new assessment at that point.
Right. So to be very clear on that one, Matt, to Stephanie Leslie's question is like, if you go up 200 square feet, you're not charged an additional per square foot
No.
price on that 200.
If you go 201 square feet, then you're taxed on all 201 square feet.
Oh,
But
not
if you
just the 1 foot. Okay.
not just the one, it's all 201. But if you went 199, it's whatever your previous assessment was.
Got it.
Great question. Thank you.
Next slide. Oh, well,
David?
I believe.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I want to be able to say is we've really appreciated all the time. I know we're getting close to our 1 hour mark. It goes by quickly. We do have some more Q&A that are there. I want to kind of, Matt, if you can bring up, but as soon as I kind of go through this one little section, these presentations, this webinar is going to be, again, available to everybody. You're going to be able to access it. We're going to put some chapters and timestamps on it so you can kind of reference some of the things that Xjvirr has said, so it'd be easy and quick to be able to find. The idea that we want to be able to do, again, just to inform people that are going to be rebuilding and facing these really, really difficult times. And one of the things that we want to do at BZ Build Co. is offer you our services if you do need help to design your new home, if you're going to be working on plans or permits or just the construction, that's something that we do. We are a full design build general contracting company, and our focus is on doing custom. So as the slide says, we're doing one of one. Matt, next slide. I think we got one more slide after that. So again, the really big thing is that we want to do is help people get back into their homes, whether it's an ADU, the primary and an ADU, whatever it is, we want to help you get back in. We're going to continue doing these on a regular basis, and I know Matt is going to talk about that a little bit at the close, but before the close, let's dive into those Q&As, see what else we got.
Absolutely. So we have a question. If my existing home had a basement, can I use that building and mass to increase the size of my house? I presume they mean if they aren't putting a basement in their new build.
So the answer is actually yes, you can. So you can have a finished basement and it can be used towards the actual livable square footage of your house. There is a difference between what is considered a basement and a cellar at the county level with Altadena. So if more than, and again, this may be a little nuanced, but if you are at your natural grade, anything that is 50% above that natural grade before you get to the actual floor is considered your basement. Anything 50% below that is considered your cellar. The thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to basements is the county counts basements as stories. Not only do they count them as stories, they also count them towards your gross structural area, which in my terms would be called your floor area ratio. So you have to keep that in mind because there is a 2-story limit when it comes to Altadena. So if you had a existing basement or proposing a new basement and you have a structure on top, you are at your 2-story limit. And all of that square footage now will count towards your gross structural area, which you are limited on your lot itself. But yes, you can have a finished basement. Mm-hmm.
And then quick question. So then if you had a cellar unfinished, that does not count towards your story limit?
If you had an unfinished cellar, or if you had a finished cellar or unfinished cellar, it doesn't really matter. That does not count towards a story. It does not count towards your gross structural area. However, cellars cannot have bedrooms,
Right.
bathrooms in them. They are essentially can only be used as storage purposes.
Got it. Thank you. Next question that was asked is, what things are grandfathered in a like-for-like build? For instance, can driveways stay 8 or 9 feet wide?
Pretty much the county's allowing everything to be grandfathered in. So if you had right now, the driveway requirement is actually 10 feet. So if you had a brand new driveway and you propose 10 feet, you can do that. However, you had a non-conforming driveway at 9 feet, you can actually propose a non-conforming 9-foot driveway at that point. Now, what you're going to probably run into is if you might want to maintain the like for like throughout the entire lot, because that driveway probably led to a non-conforming garage in the back, and you may run into some issues if you wanted to then expand your garage and then have a driveway that isn't as narrow. you're going to probably run into turning radius issues, backup clearance distance issues, such things as that. But in terms of you want to have a like for like grandfathering in of pretty much anything that was in your lot, the county is pretty much allowing you to do it.
Okay. We've got a follow-up question about basements. What if you had a
Mhm.
finished basement? Could you, in place of that, increase the total square footage of your house and build a second floor up if you're, I guess, not doing a basement on the new build? Can you take that Jenga block from the bottom and stick it on top, I guess is the question.
So it's almost like I'm assuming she's asking in terms of moving around square footage in terms of what you can and cannot allow on your square footage on your lot. Again, you are allowed a gross structural area maximum on your lot. And there's a formula the county does have. So assuming that you are below that number, that is maximum amount on your lot, yes, you can essentially play with your square footage as you see fit. The only thing again that I would like to emphasize is that the basement is going to count as a story. So if you have the basement and then you have the actual home on top, you then can't add another story on top of that. That would be considered a 3-story structure at that point. But if you did want to you had a basement and then you wanted to expand beyond what the footprint was of the previous house, yes, you can do that as long as, again, you're within your gross structural area allowance
And
and
then
lot coverage allowance.
Yeah,
it
point of
sounds like they're
clarification.
asking if they filled in the basement then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, if you essentially if you fill in the basement, you don't. It's no
Yeah.
longer there.
That
Then you're
basement's
just
gone.
it's gone now at that point. Then you can add a second story on top of the house at that point. You're
Okay.
just you're essentially shifting the square footage from that basement and putting on top of the structure, and that would be then your 2 stories. Then you would just have filled in dirt to where the actual basement is, and then it would be gone.
Okay. And then there's a question from Sam, who's no longer with us in the room, I see, but we'll still ask it because it'll be relevant to anyone who joined later, because we talked about it early on. And that is, how long does it take to get your plans approved after you submit your first plans to Plan Check?
So right now, I'm assuming we're talking about the second phase of the structural phase. Right now, the county is saying they're taking roughly about 3 to 4 weeks for that to be reviewed. I actually believe that it's probably going to take more about 2 months. In terms of what you are looking at, a lot of building code requirements, fire sprinkler requirements. Again, depending on where you are at, if you're on the high fire severity zone, there are more building code requirements that you actually have to look at. There's even pending legislation for additional requirements that individuals may have to look at or submit. So yeah, again, the county is saying they're taking roughly about 3 to 4 weeks for that plan check set to be reviewed. I would guess it's probably going to take right around 2 months. And I'd also like to emphasize, in my 8 years of doing planning, I've never seen a human being submit a perfect set of plans the first time. No matter how much I think I know, you're never going to submit anything that's perfect the first time. So you always have to account that there is going to be a second round of corrections that have taken place, which will then add an additional few weeks to it as well.
And I have a question. I want to you touched on it a little bit. We do talk about it on a regular basis with some people, at least amongst ourselves. Pending legislation. I know that in Sacramento, there's a lot of conversations happening right now where assembly members and senators are looking at things that can help Altadena.
Mhm.
The process that we're looking at right now is the current set of codes. So if you want to get your plans in, get them approved, start building, you're going to have to follow all of the California building codes and the Title 24 energy efficiency standards. The question is, if someone were to take some time to be able maybe take advantage of a legislative change or new adoption or a consideration that they might be looking at in Sacramento, how would that then be applied from a planning perspective if they already had their plan sets? Are they going to be able to say, hey, I included this, but now I don't have to, I'm going to take it away? Or do they just not have to build it on site? And any sort of clarification on that would be fantastic.
So, I mean, you're talking about a gray area when it comes to state law. It always comes down to the intentionality of the legislator and how the bill is actually written. So, if let's assume someone does have a plan set that is in for specific building code requirements that they have to meet as of today's code standards, and a piece of legislation gets approved as an urgency tomorrow that says, hey, anyone who now submits plans going forward no longer has to meet these building code requirements. It all depends on whether or not that bill backdates going before that submittal takes place, or if it's something that takes place from the immediacy going forward. It really comes down to the intentionality is if their intention is anything from this point going forward should not have to have these requirements, then that person who's currently in review would have to still do the requirements. Now, what they could do, and this again may be a little tricky, is you could essentially withdraw your application and then just resubmit it again with underneath the umbrella of what the new state laws actually would be. That way you are then captured in what that state law is trying to intend. But again, it really comes down to how state laws are written. And again, the legislator, if they want to, they could just backdate it to any permit that was submitted on X date, or any application, completed application submitted on X date going forward. They no longer have to meet X requirements. They are then subject to this new streamlined requirement, so on and so forth. So really, it just simply comes down to how the state bill is written. My job is to try to keep track and monitor that, and then ask questions and follow-ups and interpretations to see exactly what it is that they mean when they say certain words.
Well, and I think that that's a really fantastic, and I know that I'm going to be asking our team to have a clip of just that, because that was a really great explanation. It was fantastic. So I want to thank everybody that joined us, that submitted their questions. Matt, you did a great job asking them. Xjvirr, as always, it is a pleasure having you and asking you questions. I think that, again, this is a very difficult time. There's lots of things that people are covering, and so this is very valuable. And if Jonathan, if you have any sort of last comments, and then we'll turn it over to Matt to close this out.
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up real quick. Thank you all for joining. Just wanted to lead with, this is really here to be an educational platform. BZ Build Co. is really built on providing support for the community. So following these webinars, we are available. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. We can either, David and I can answer them, or we'll go to our team members. With that being said, we look forward to continuing our webinar series, as well as our in person on Saturday at our office in Burbank, located on Olive. So we look forward to keeping in touch with you all.
Absolutely. As Jonathan just said, you can see all of our upcoming events at bzbuildco.com/events. We have weekly webinars currently every Thursday at 6 p.m. like this one. And then Saturdays for the rest of this month are weekly, and then they'll be transitioning to bi-weekly. And they are on the same topics as are discussed in the webinars each week, but it gives you a chance to come in. You can speak with our build specialist if you have more detailed questions. That's absolutely encouraged, and meet other people who are in the same boat as well. But all of these webinars are recorded. They do live on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/bzbuildco. And so if you have a friend who has questions about the permitting process, you can feel free to share the link to this webinar with them, and hopefully it will benefit them as well and answer any questions they have. And I just want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. We're trying to get as much information into people's hands as possible because this is absolutely unprecedented. I myself, I live just off lake on Howard. Our co-founder Ashlyn lived up on Poppy Fields. She lost her house as well, and so we're not just some fly-by-night company who's swooped in. We're locals. We're your neighbors, and we want to get Altadena back as soon as possible. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Hang on, there's one more Q&A. Let me see here. Oh, Florence will be reaching out to us tomorrow. We look forward to hearing from you, Florence. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great night. And hopefully we'll see you again at one of the webinars or in-person events.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.